Morning. Can I hear
Good morning,
anyone?
sir.
Yeah.
Morning, sir.
We were discussing about the vasculitis in the last class, and we discussed till large vessel vasculitis. So we'll discuss about the small and the medium vessel vasculitis, and one of the important in the this first we will discuss about the small vessel vasculitis, and then the medium vessel vasculitis, and then we finish it off. One of the vasculitis in the small vessel vasculitis, Hinal-Schwann purpura. It involves mostly small vessels and post-capillary venules. Here you can see the males and females preponderance is equal, and the mean age is 5 years. So in the children, in the young age, the most common you will be seeing is the Hinal-Schwann purpura, the small vessel vasculitis, and the predilection is equal in both males and females. And in this you can see palpable purpura, arthralgias, abdominal pain, and renal disorders. So the patient presents you, a young boy or girl is brought to you with palpable purpura, and the child may be complaining of pains and abdominal pain most commonly. And on examination, you will be seeing a renal disorders, renal parameters being deranged. And here you can see urinary tract infections preceding 1 to 3 weeks, and tissue deposition. The pathophysiology is here the tissue deposition of IgA containing immune complexes. So a small child of age between 5 to 10 years is brought to you with complaints of purpura and pains and abdominal pain with purpura. And if he is having any previous complaints, then you can suspect Hinal-Schwann purpura, and most commonly it's due to the IgA deposition of immune complexes in skin, kidney, and bowel. So you can see the deposition is seen in the skin, leading to purpuras, and the kidneys leading to renal disorders, and the bowel leading to abdominal pain. So the GI involvement here you can see it's seen in 85% of the uh, patients, and the patient will be, I mean, the child will be complaining of severe cramping and pain, and nausea, vomiting, and bleeding. And major hemorrhage or intersusception is an uncommon but life-threatening complication in children. So you won't be seeing hemorrhage most on all the patients, but it may be seen, and when it is seen, then it could be a life-threatening condition. So how does the renal involvement is seen? It's not seen in everyone. 10 to 50% of the patients present with renal disorders, and it's more severe in adults. And it determines the prognosis. So the longer the disease, the more the renal involvement, and the very bad the prognosis. So some may recover without therapy, and the asymptomatic will present as asymptomatic hematuria and proteinuria, and crysenteric glomerulonephritis is seen when you do biopsy. Crysenteric type of glomerulonephritis is seen in these patients. So they present with hematuria without any complaints. So on examination, you could be seeing on CUE, you will be seeing proteinuria, and on biopsy, when you go for biopsy, you will be seeing crysenteric glomerulonephritis. And very less percentage, that is less than 0.5% of these people will lead to end-stage renal disease. So important points here is the gastrointestinal involvement and the renal involvement. And the renal, you will be seeing asymptomatic hematuria and proteinuria, and on biopsy, you will be seeing crysenteric type of glomerulonephritis. Whereas only 0.5% or less than 0.5% will lead to end-stage renal disorder. And the other involvement could be testicular involvement, pulmonary hemorrhage, and CNS complications. Sorry. Okay. So how does this present? Normally it presents as single episodes with less than 4 weeks of duration, and recurrence rate is about 40%. So the the boy can again, or the baby can again present with the recurrence in less than 4 weeks or after the 4 weeks. But normally you will be seeing a single episodes with a duration of less than 4 weeks. And how do you want to treat it? The supportive measures, you can by treating the dehydration and all, or the secondary complications, the renal complications. And the most important is here of the treatment is corticosteroids. And the effect of corticosteroids early in the nephritis, that is before any hemorrhage or any other complications is seen. If before you are suspecting glomerulonephritis and you have not done biopsy, the involvement of corticosteroids in the treatment is not yet sure, but you can give the corticosteroids as early as possible, and it will help in the prognosis. So the treatment is corticosteroids for the vasculitis and hemorrhage, but the action of corticosteroids in the glomerulonephritis is not yet proved, but it has better prognosis when it's given. The next is Chukstra's vasculitis, and this is also a small vessel vasculitis. But as we have spoken in the last class, there are granulomatous vasculitis 4, and Chukstra's vasculitis is one of that. So it's a necrotizing granulomatous vasculitis of small arteries and venules. So the patients here will have a history of prior asthma, and they will be on leukotriene inhibitors and or on steroids which have been stopped. So history of prior asthma, allergic rhinitis, or when be seen in the patients of Chukstra's vasculitis, and on examination you will be seeing eosinophilia and the pulmonary infiltrates and the intra and extravascular granulomas. So the criteria that is required for the to diagnose or to say the Chuksta syndrome is patient should be having an asthma and eosinophilia should be present, polyneuropathy should be seen, and the pulmonary infiltrates which are non-fixed, and paranasal sinus abnormalities and extravascular eosinophilias. So the presence of 4 out of these 6 will lead to the confirmation of the disease. So asthma, eosinophilia, polyneuropathy or mononeuropathy, pulmonary infiltrates, paranasal sinus abnormalities, and extravascular eosinophils. So here you can see asthma precedes the vasculitis. This is very important. Asthma precedes the vasculitis in Chukstra's vasculitis. And the differential diagnosis, normally we get confused with Wegener's granulomatosis. Whereas in the Wegener's granulomatosis, you won't be seeing asthma being preceding the vasculitis. So the important point that you have to take home point is asthma preceding the vasculitis is seen in Chukstra's vasculitis. And the presence of P ANCA is seen in 70%. That is, P ANCA is myeloperoxidase antibodies against the myeloperoxidase, and it's more responsive to steroids alone. So the treatment in both Chukstra's and the Hinanshiran perfida is steroids. And then the Wegener's granulomatosis. This is another granulomatosis vasculitis, and it's a necrotizing affecting the small vessels, and it affects persons of any age. So there is no age predilection and there is no sex predilection in this Wegener's granulomatosis, and it affects the upper and the lower respiratory tracts and the renal disorders, the glomerulonephritis, and it can involve the other organs also. So the important point is it involves mostly the lungs and the kidneys. So the two most important involved systemic organs in the Wegener's granulomatosis are the pulmonary and the renal, and it may involve the other organs also, but the most predilection is towards the liver, sorry, the lungs and the kidneys. So there could be a nasal or sinus disease destruction, and it's for the involvement is first the renal disorders followed by respiratory, and it may progress very rapidly. And the other non-specific abnormalities are conjunctivitis, scleritis, episcleritis, and proptosis. So the important points here is there's involvement of renal followed by respiratory, and it could be very progressive. And the criteria is important. There should be presence of 2 or more of this following, that is nasal or oral ulcers or purulent or bloody discharge. So nasal or oral ulcers or presence of a discharge, or there is abnormal chest x-ray, that is nodules, focal infiltrate and cavities, and abnormal urine sediments, that is microhematuria and RBC cas, or granulomatous inflammation. So the presence of 2 or more, that is nasal or oral ulcers, or discharge, that is purulent or bloody discharge, abnormal chest X-ray, that is nodules, focal infiltrates and cavities, or abnormal urine sediment, that is microhematuria or RBC CAS, or granulomatous inflammation. Presence of two or more of this following four, then you can criteria can you diagnosis Wegener's granulomatosis. So it is C ANCA positive. Uh, there is more than 90% of the patients with classic symptoms, the one we were discussing previously, with involvement of renal and pulmonary and with that criteria. And presence of C ANCA is seen in more than 90% of the patient, and it facilitates the clinical diagnosis but does not eliminate the diagnosis for the biopsy and not for intensification of therapy. So the presence of C ANCA doesn't determine the treatment or doesn't eliminate the need for the biopsy. So it only facilitates the clinical biopsy, that clinical diagnosis. That is when you are clinically suspecting the Wegener's and you have the presence of C ANCA, then you can say that it could be a Wegener's granulomatosis, and then you go for the biopsy and the treatment, and the treatment doesn't depend upon the presence of or absence of the ANCA. So biopsy, where do you want to do biopsy? In the paranasal sinus, the larynx, and the lung. And the renal biopsy is rarely distinctive enough to be definitive. So you can do renal biopsy, but it is not distinctive enough or definitive enough to diagnose the disease. So the lung biopsy is most important, and the paranasal, nasal, and the larynx can be also done for the diagnosis of the disease. So how would you see the outcomes? The intervention, the survival upon you're not giving any treatment, then 50% will die at the 5 months, and when you're giving glucocorticoids and that is you start steroids, then 50% you can see 1 year survival, and when you're giving steroids along with cytoxan, then you will be seeing 80% of the people having a survival rate of 8 years. So no treatment, the patient dies in 5 months. The steroids alone, the patient will survive till 1 year, that is 50% of the patients. And the steroids along with cytotoxin, 80% of the patients you will be seeing 8 years survival rate. So as we were discussing previously, normally the Chukstra's vasculitis and Wegener's granulomatosis is the one of differential diagnosis because of the clinical presentation sometimes. So patient will be having asthma in both of them, but asthma preceding the disease you will be seeing in the Chukstra's vasculitis, but it is very uncommon. And the presence of eosinophilia is present in both of them, but is very high in the Chukstra's vasculitis, whereas it is modest in Wegener's granulomatosis. And the atopy, that is reaction to the foreign or things, that is you will be seeing in Chukstra's vasculitis, whereas in the Wegener's granulomatosis it's uncommon. The upper airway destruction and pulmonary nodules. This is more common in Wegener's granulomatosis, and the renal failure, though is present in both of them, it is more destructive in Wegener's granulomatosis. So the first three, that is asthma in the presence of eosinophils and reaction to atopy, is more common in Chukstra's vasculitis. So a patient presenting with purpura, palpable purpura, and renal involvement and pulmonary involvement, then the presence of asthma preceding the disease or preceding the complaints, and the eosinophils presence on the blood picture, and history of atopy, then you can go towards Chukstra's vasculitis. But whereas there is an upper airway destruction with the presence of pulmonary nodules and the renal failure is more progressive, then you can go towards the Wegener's granulomatosis. So the presence of asthma, eosinophils, and atopy, and the presence of upper airway destruction, pulmonary nodules, and renal failure, which is more in where which patient determines the differential diagnosis. So those were some of the small vessel vasculitis, and polyarteritis nodosa and Kawasaki disease. These are two medium vessel vasculitis. So polyarteritis nodosa, it is a primary systemic necrotizing vasculitis. So here you can see this is necrotizing vasculitis but not a granulomatous. So the granulomatous vasculitis are giant cell arteritis, Wegener's granulomatosis, uh, temporal Takayasu arteritis, and Chukstra's syndrome, that is Chukstra's vasculitis. Those four were granulomatous necrotizing vasculitis, whereas this is only necrotizing vasculitis. So it involves mostly medium-sized arteries, and it may also involve the small arteries also, and it doesn't involve veins commonly. So it's very rare involvement of the veins, and it never involves the large elastic arteries. So the important points are, it involves, most commonly it involves medium-sized arteries, but you may see the involvement of small-sized arteries also, and the venular involvement is very rare, and it never involves the large elastic arteries. And it may be secondary to rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren syndrome, hepatitis B, or hepatitis C. And there are two types. It could be limited or progressive or fulminant. The limited may also become the fulminant on long standing. So whom does affect any age, but the peak is seen between the third to sixth decade, and the male to female ratio is 2:1. So here you can see there are very few disorders where you will be seeing male predilection, and the polyarthritis nodosa is one of that. The most of the autoimmune disorders, you have female predilection being more, and polyarthritis nodosa is one of the disease where you will be seeing the male predilection. So how does the patient present with? He presents with fever and malaise and arthralgia and arthritis. On long standing, he may be showing weight loss also, and there's a presence of skin lesions. And when there is neural involvement, the neurological involvement, you will be seeing peripheral being more involved than the central. So the neurological manifestations will be more of peripheral involvement than of the central involvement. And the renal is mostly seen in 70% of the patient, and the hypertension in 25% of the patients, and the cardiac involvement is seen in 50% of the patients, and gastrointestinal in 50%. So here you can see the most common involvement or the most involved organs are the brain and the renal, the kidneys, followed by the heart and the GI system, and the classical pan rare lung disease. So the spared organ in the polyarthritis nodosa is lungs. So you won't be seeing the lungs being involved commonly in the polyarthritis nodosa. So a question where you can be asked which of the following is involved in the polyarthritis nodosa, except then the answer would be the pulmonary involvement or the lungs. And the most commonly involved would be the renal system, followed by the neurological, that is brain. So the presence of hypertension is also seen in these patients, which is important. Patient presenting with fever, malaise, arthralgias, with skin lesions and hypertension, it is important that you rule out the vasculitis disorder, that is polyarthritis nodosa, mostly in the third to sixth decade. So what do you see on the blood picture? You will be seeing anemia, leukocytosis, and thrombocytosis. The thrombocytosis is secondary to the anemia, so that is reactive thrombocytosis, and the erythrocyte sedimentation rate is elevated. So the ESR being elevated with hypocomplementemia is seen in 25% of the patients. So this is an important point. ESR being elevated along with anemia, leukocytosis, and thrombocytosis with hypocomplementemia in a patient with hypertension, with skin lesions, and arthralgias and weight loss, and then you can suspect a vasculitis disorder, that is polyarthritis nodosa. And involvement of in the hepatitis B antigens is 10 to 54%, and whereas hepatitis C antibodies is very less, that is 5%, and it is P-ANCA positive, and that is less than 10% of the involvement, and C-ANCA is very rare. So both C-ANCA and P-ANCA can be positive in polyarthritis nodosa, but P-ANCA is more common, that is, but it is seen in less than 10% of the patients. So the important here is involvement of neurological and renal involvement, and very less involvement or no involvement of the lungs. So the organ that is not involved in PAN or the polyarthritis nodosa is lungs. So that is very important to remember. And how do you want to diagnose? The biopsy, the symptomatic site, that is skin, the sural nerve, the muscle, the liver, testis, and the temporal artery. These are the sites where you can, symptomatic sites, where you can take a biopsy for the diagnosis. And renal, it does not allow the differentiation of the type of the vasculitis. So a renal biopsy can be taken, but to say whether it's a vasculitis involvement or not, but to differentiate which type of vasculitis, it's not that easy on the renal biopsy, and the segmental necrotizing glomerulonephritis is seen on the renal biopsy. And the angio-abdominal withdrawal, the angiogram, the evidence of intra-abdominal involvement and the other involvement of the involved organs not availed for biopsy. See here you can see the. So how is the prognosis and the treatment? So if you don't treat the patients, then the mortality rate is at 5 years, and the treatment, the 80% of the people, 85% of the people, when you're not, yeah. So the treatment should be of corticosteroids and cytotoxics, and the 40% relapse rate is seen within 33 months. So the survival rate is better when 80% of the people survive when you give corticosteroids and cytotoxic at 5 years. But when the patients are not treated, 85% of the patients will die within the 5 years. And the relapse is 40% of relapse is seen. The 40% of the patients the relapse is seen in the median of 33 months, that is around 3 years. So the other medium vessel vasculitis is Kawasaki disease, and it is an acute febrile multi-system disease of children. It is seen mostly in less than 5 years of age, and the peak being of 2 years of age. And it's a medium vessel vasculitis, second most common vasculitis in children. As you have seen, the previously the other the common vasculitis in children, and now this is the second most common vasculitis in children, involving mostly less than 5 years, and the peak being at 2 years of age. And how does the child present? He presents with the fever, lymphadenopathy, that is non-suppurative lymphadenopathy, mucosal changes, and the changes in palms and soles, that is erythema, redness, edema, and desquamation, and a skin rash and bilateral non-purulent conjunctivitis. So it is a febrile multi-system disease, the involvement of almost all systems, and it is second most common vasculitis in children, and involving at the children's less than 5 years of age, and the peak being at the 2 years of age. And the clinical features are fever, non-suppurative cervical lymphadenopathy, mucosal changes, changes in palms and soles, skin rash, and bilateral non-purulent conjunctivitis. So how do you want to diagnose? The persisting fever of more than 5 days, or the presence of the features, the, the common features that we be seeing is bilateral conjunctival congestion, changes of lips and oral cavity, polymorphous exanthema, changes of peripheral extremities, and acute non-purulent cervical lymphadenopathy. So a child presenting with a fever of more than 5 days with the following like conjunctival congestion, changes of lips and oral cavity, polymorphous exanthema, changes of peripheral extremities, and acute or non-purulent cervical lymphadenopathy, then you can diagnose the kid as having the Kawasaki disease. So how do you want to treat it? So IV gamma immunoglobulins at a dose of 2 gram per kg as a single infusion for 10 hours, followed by aspirin. So the treatment of choice for almost all is the steroids, but here you will be seeing IV immunoglobulins being given along with aspirin. So it's very important to remember in Kawasaki disease, the treatment of choice is IV immunoglobulins, and it is given at a dose of 2 grams per kg. It's a very high dose. It's a single infusion for 10 hours along with aspirin, that is 100 mg per kg per day for 14 days. So the surgery, it is done in patients who develop giant aneurysm, and the surgical treatment includes the thrombus clearing, aneurysmal reconstruction, and coronary artery bypass graft. So the most common condition where the surgery should be done is when there is a giant aneurysm, and the other the what is it helpful is it helps in the thrombus clearing and aneurysmal reconstruction. And the follow-up, a 2D echo should be done at 6 to 8 weeks after onset of fever. And if echo is normal after 6 to 8 weeks, aspirin can be stopped. So the treatment, it's very important to remember. In almost all vasculitis, the treatment of choice is steroids, but whereas in Kawasaki disease, the treatment is IV immunoglobulins, and it's a very high dose along with aspirin. It is given. So just I want to review once what I've told. So HSP, that is Hinonchinal purpura, is one of the most common of small vessel vasculitis and affects mean age of 5 years, that male and female predilection being equal. So the Kawasaki disease and HSP are the most common in the children, but the most common vasculitis in children is Hinonchinal purpura, followed by Kawasaki disease. And the involvement of GI and renal involvement is most common in Hinonchinal purpura. The kid presents with abdominal pain, and the treatment is steroids. The Chuksta's vasculitis and Wegener's granulomatosis are the two conditions which has a differential diagnosis, and the differential diagnosis is asthma, eosinophils, and atopy, and upper airway destruction, pulmonary nodules, and renal failure. And depending upon the six involvement of the six, and they can differentiate between Chuksta's vasculitis or Wegener granulomatosis. The polyarteritis nodosa and Kawasaki disease are the two conditions affecting the medium vessel disorders, and the no involvement of the lungs or very less involvement of the lungs is the important point or take home point in the polyarteritis nodosa. And the treatment of the Kawasaki disease, it involves IV immunoglobulins, whereas the most of the vasculitis, the treatment involves the corticosteroids. I think I'll finish it off here because the topic is done. So we'll discuss about the gout in the next class, and the autoimmune disorders will be finished, and then we'll start about the next topics. So thank you, and we'll see you in the next class.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
Yeah.